We are looking at an image clearly created with AI about director Kash Patel, the director of the FBI. A film noir style with lots of light and shadow, full of spy and detective stories. What's happening in the United States in Washington is very similar to what used to happen in those movies. The FBI crisis is causing a tremendous scandal, and there's a report that, by the way, was published by The Atlantic, and that obviously draws attention. Let's go into the details of what is known so far. The Atlantic, the American newspaper, publishes the following. FBI Director Smith.
Yeah. Kash Patel asegura está viviendo.
The FBI director is an unusual figure, a different kind of person compared to other directors who had more experience in investigation. He is a controversial figure, someone who has spent a lot of taxpayers' money to travel wherever his girlfriend wants to be or wherever he wants to visit her. A somewhat well-known singer. But now Patel is at the center of the political storm. They claim that she's even having episodes that seem like paranoia. The trigger happened on April 10th, just a few days ago. Today is April 18th, but exactly 8 days ago, Patel couldn't access his internal system. Suddenly, he wanted to access his documents, his files, and suddenly there was no way. He went into a panic, convinced that maybe he had already been fired. Maybe that was the way he was going to find out that they no longer wanted his services, that he was going to be out of the FBI leadership. We have to remember that there's a purge going on inside the United States, within Trump's camp. Regarding leaders, important figures within the military but also within the cabinet and in important security areas. It's even known that the very director of intelligence was about to be fired. On this occasion, a close friend of both of Donald Trump and of Tulsi Gabbard herself advocated for her, and thanks to that she wasn't fired because it would have been a scandal. All these firings, according to what those who were close to Kash Patel claim or have, let's say, leaked, say it was madness. The moment when he realizes that he can't access his files. He thinks he's been fired and panics. The witnesses describe this as even a fit of hysteria, something extremely serious since he is an intelligence chief. After all, he's the head of the key intelligence agency of the United States, which is the FBI. They're supposed to be, let's say, very emotionally and mentally stable in any situation that happens. They must maintain and remain at an impressive level of stability. But imagine that when he thinks he's being fired, he goes crazy. That's the description given by those closest to Kash Patel. The situation escalated quickly. According to FBI officials, they began to wonder who is really in charge of the FBI, since this person, being hysterical, couldn't really be the one controlling that agency. Kash Patel's team, the FBI director's team, says they are going to sue the Atlantic, meaning they are going to sue this newspaper. But before I go to Kash Patel's team's reaction, let's first go to what supposedly happened. Afterwards, we'll see what Kash Patel is planning in response to this publication by The Atlantic. This whole situation caused confusion even among members of Congress in the United States and within the FBI itself, where they're not really sure who was actually in charge. Although the incident has not been resolved, it exposed deep paranoia on the part of its own director, who fears losing his position after recent changes in the administration. Internal sources describe the troubling pattern as excessive alcohol use, even unexplained absences. Suddenly he disappears just like that, out of nowhere. Also impulsive decisions at different times. It is reported that key meetings have been delayed due to nights of excess, or that situations the FBI has to resolve are delayed because of excess. Let's say, not directly affecting sensitive national security operations. In extreme cases, his security team has even had trouble waking him up, even considering using tactical equipment to access his room, thinking that maybe something happened to him inside the FBI, and the fear grows, and officials warn that his behavior could represent a vulnerability to threats like terrorism. The situation is getting worse in the international context because of what's happening right now with the situation in Ukraine, Russia, the situation in Iran, and the issue with China, and other matters that, well, require a person with the highest standard of discipline, with the highest level and standard of behavior, let's say, almost perfect, let's say. That's what is supposed or expected of a person at that level. The internal climate in that agency is described as critical, with unmotivated agents, mass departures, loss of experience at one of the most important agencies in the world. A lot of people who work there at the FBI have chosen to leave. And as they leave, agents with a lot of experience are leaving. It will take you years to gain that experience, but the agents simply feel unmotivated to work in an agency where there is a director who is out of control, but the accusation goes further. They claim that the FBI has been used for political purposes, meaning to go after opponents, which puts the rule of law in the United States at risk. With all this, the big question is whether the FBI is still a solid institution. I suppose it is. I suppose that an agency of that level is bigger than just one director, but it's still concerning. Now, there is already a reaction from the agency itself, from the team, and this is what they say so we can see both opinions. It's not what The Atlantic says, but they have already given a response to this. According to what is reported in the article that points out excessive alcohol consumption and unexplained absences from the FBI, Patel's defense claims or at least explains that the media outlet was previously warned not to publish what they describe as a hit piece or a media attack. According to the lawyers, the publication could have significant legal consequences for alleged defamation. This turns the FBI's internal crisis into an open battle between institutional power and the media. The legal strategy would seek not only to defend Patel's image, but also, as they say, to discredit, let's say, the press, specifically The Atlantic. This confrontation is happening at a very delicate moment. Why? There are previous reports about erratic behavior from other media outlets, meaning that other outlets also have the same information that he has exhibited erratic behavior at different times. The case could set a key precedent regarding the boundaries between freedom of the press and freedom of information and the responsibility that comes with it. But it also raises questions about the transparency of critical agencies and also opens up the debate about what is happening. What's happening inside this agency? Obviously not, but let's also move on to another important matter. In other matters, it is also being reported that the Strait is being reopened again. Supposedly, looking at these charts, you can see some movement, some traffic, but obviously there's still the question of what kind of ship it is. Look, for example, this one I just clicked on. Apparently, it's an oil tanker that would be heading to Djibouti, according to this, from the United Arab Emirates, apparently. Well, and like that, if you go in there, you keep clicking on the ships that are apparently crossing, it just shows oil tankers. There's an area where it seems like, in fact, they're hurrying according to the reports that have been observed minute by minute. The space has already reopened. Airspace over Iran, by the way. So we should also talk about that topic right away. We'll discuss it in a moment, right? But it says the following, let's see. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Irania Basaragachi, declares that in accordance with the ceasefire, the passage of all commercial vessels is now completely open. At the same time, there are complaints from some oil tankers saying they are not being allowed to pass. Let's see how they move in the next few hours. And we'll also see tomorrow's reactions since there will be the oil markets, but also, another matter is that a few minutes ago, they confirmed the partial reopening of the closed airspace. So let's go to flight radar right away, okay? And while they bring up the live feed here, please, I ask you, give us a hand with a like and by sharing. We really appreciate your participation, and I just want to say, that's great. You already know, we're here updating every day with what's happening live. Sometimes we record the videos and if we can't go live for some reason, but let's say we're updating throughout the whole day, right? What I notice is that there are no planes. I mean, they might have said they closed or opened the airspace, but there's absolutely nothing. Just look at this, and if you get closer. Let's see, over here you can also see a plane kind of trying to cross. Let's see, what kind of plane is this? This is a plane from Iran. It's a plane from Iran, apparently. Well, that seems to be the only one, and it looks like it came out of trouble. He says it went wrong, I think. Well, from there on, if you look at the map, there's nothing else. There's nothing else. Let's see if we can check it again later, right? We'll check how things are going. In the meantime, well, civil aviation is reopening. This was decided after the safety conditions were evaluated by the Civil Military Coordination Committee. And well, full activity resumes according to them. Meanwhile, it's just been 24 hours without airstrikes since the start of the war with Iran. I mean, maybe later they'll say there were some, but at least according to the data, there haven't been any. In fact, the projectile alert system hasn't been activated since early Friday morning. That's an interesting sign too, showing that there's a certain calm in that area. Other important matters as well. Let's go with that. In today's curious news so far, at least one woman in China is angry with her husband. She starts throwing hundreds of thousands of euros in cash off the balcony. Just imagine the madness. The incident happened in a residential complex where, according to reports, a crowd obviously gathered within minutes since everyone wanted to grab the bills. The event quickly escalated on social media, obviously becoming a viral video over there in China. There are different versions, ranging from an emotional crisis to a domestic argument with his partner. The authorities intervened to control the situation and recover some of the money, showing that there could obviously be public disorder in the area. They say there was pushing and, well, potential incidents. The phenomenon shows how a crowd of representatives. Have they turned it into a case? We also have a topic pending that we will be expanding on. Obviously not one of them, but rather one of the strangest theories we've been detecting in all these cases. No, I didn't include all of them because I don't want to make the video too long right now, but if you want, we can look into it more later. More about other theories, but I picked some of the weirdest, the strangest ones. Not because they explain the phenomenon exactly as it is, but maybe some of those theories have some truth to them. But I don't think any of those theories completely explains all the cases. I think some cases could be different and not all of them would be connected, but here are the theories and obviously I ask you to share your opinion. There are several cases, for example, of people who still haven't been taken into account. Like the case of Amy Screech, which by the way is also a pretty strange case. And here, what I've told you is that I'll try to bring you more. Well, in fact, we're already preparing more topics, let's say, about scientists or people close to them, like the case of Amy Screech, right? Which is quite strange, isn't it? And it's related, it's her, right? And it's related to an anti-gravity technology, according to what's reported, right? All of this along with others, right? Others who have also have disappeared in recent years, right? Because it's an issue that's been going on for years. Well, obviously it generates theories. It's not. You can't have, especially because honestly, some of the cases are extraordinary. For example, in her case, she worked on a technology that they claimed was going to change transportation worldwide, that was going to change energy on a global level. They claimed that their research was going to break known physics, just like that. That's the level of research we're discussing. Where, well, collaborators of the same scientist, other scientists also related to this type of technology, right? Well, these have caught their attention. What do they call them? Well, technologies related to things that almost seem impossible, right? For example, one of the most interesting ideas is precisely that these scientists have that in common. At least several of them who worked on technology that was basically going to change the world for the better. And that was going to affect many industries, right? That's one of the ideas that, well, maybe it makes more sense, is more logical than all the strange ones out there. This one is probably the least strange. In which they claim that because of that, they've been silenced or even taken somewhere else to get the information they have. There is no public evidence, and that's the mystery of this whole case or series of cases. There's no evidence that can confirm it. Hey, look, see, this one managed to save himself, this one managed to escape. Escape because they were going to, until something like that happens or until they find someone alive who can explain what happened, it's difficult. Maybe this could be understood a little better. The problem is that hasn't happened. And several scientists, like Amy herself, warned those close to her that she felt they would soon come for her and eliminate her. Supposedly, she took her own life. She didn't disappear, she took her own life. Well, they say she took her own life. Although those close to her, well, many think that's not the case. Another theory, which is one of the most controversial of all, is that this is not related to scientific advances, but rather that it is related to something else that has to do with, well, let's say, non-human technologies, right? As they call them. They claim that there would be scientists who would be, and this has been said in congressional hearings. That doesn't mean this is definitive proof, but at least the fact that military personnel, ex-military, and intelligence agents talk about the subject openly with evidence shows that at least that evidence, even though it doesn't fill all the gaps, at least fills some of the gaps that have remained unresolved for years. Donald Trump yesterday, as we mentioned here during the broadcast, gave a statement that indeed they want to achieve it, but it isn't so. To release all the information, but that's the most he really wants. And it doesn't happen, right? And besides, you start to see how all this maneuvering actually seems to be the opposite. It seems that in reality, they're not really trying to provide more information. Another theory that's also unsettling, and something that some of these scientists who have disappeared mentioned to those close to them, which was the idea that some kind of directed energy was being used. We have to remember that there have been reports of alleged microwave attacks with directed energy in some way. A method that was supposedly used, for example, over there in Venezuela, right? Many people don't even want to talk about it, right? Anything that suddenly goes outside a certain pattern. There are many, even right here on YouTube, who argue they prefer not to talk about it, right? Supposedly because, well, they don't want people to think badly of them, right? But they really don't dig into a topic that's clearly happening. The famous Havana syndrome, which has been so well documented and that so many have also tried to erase, right? But psychotronic weapons are known. There have even been presentations at these weapons conventions about some of the technologies in that regard. One of the protests in Serbia, you might remember, a sonic weapon was used, which is a weapon that, in theory, Russia sold to the Serbians, right? Others say that it was even the Russians themselves using it with the approval of the Serbian government, right? That's something they obviously don't admit, right? There's no consensus on this, obviously. There's no scientific consensus. There's no agreement on whether this is a neurological phenomenon or something else. These supposed attacks. But it's one of the theories that's most often used in this topic of disappearances, that directed energy weapons were used or have been used against these people to confuse them. Things. Honestly, this theory doesn't really convince me. It's not that it doesn't exist. Obviously, Havana syndrome exists and that whole situation. All of this has been well documented, but that it has a connection to these scientists, honestly, from my point of view, I don't really see much of a connection, at least right now, except for some that we've mentioned here before, who say they've experienced this kind of attack, right? Other than that, let's leave it as somewhat unlikely. Other matters also suggest that this isn't an isolated case, or rather, isolated cases that they're trying to connect. But that this wouldn't be the case. Instead, they're part of a network meant to silence sensitive topics, especially defense, energy, and medicine. In some cases, it's even mentioned that certain individuals close to AIs, to artificial intelligences, are also silenced. It's not clear, at least for now, that any of those theories are feasible. There's another strange one that seems more feasible to me. Another of the strange or odd theories is the idea that this is a cover-up, either by some government or a corporate cover-up, that it's not. That wants, let's say, to protect, so to speak, their business by sidelining, making people disappear, or removing certain people who could affect them in technological, medical, aeronautical, or even energy advancements, right? In other words, that these inventors, these scientists who are connected to patents that are so valuable right now might have been made to disappear or even forced into anonymity, right? Make it look like they disappear without actually being missing. I mean, their families consider them missing to their loved ones, but they're pushed aside because of the risk they pose or the level of risk involved if they reveal or share information about a patent, which also isn't confirmed. All the cases, because not all of them are scientists who patented things. There were agents or people who were in the military or in management roles, or even areas related to other topics that aren't related to creating the invention. But what they did have, and this is true for almost all of them, is that they had access to sensitive information. And that's where maybe it could be. That might be the answer, that they were people who had a lot of important information and therefore were highly valuable. Or I would even dare to say that some of them have left of their own accord, precisely because of that, right? I mean, because of the importance of the information they have and the risk it poses to their loved ones for having that information. Because just imagine any of those people, even if they don't get to them directly, but instead reach a family member or loved one, and they say, well, look, we have access to this person, to your children, to your siblings, whoever it may be, give us this information, right? But if that person suddenly disappears, they can't take the information, right? There are a lot of ideas. I wanted to discuss it with you. I feel that for now, it's a maze with no way out for now, but I think at some point we'll start to get a little more clarity on all this. I'll be back later with updates with what's happening in the world. It's a weekend where people expect things to go one way or the other. You know what I mean, right? The situation with Iran. And also, well, I want to thank the community that, well, likes the videos, shares, and joins us here every day. Thank you so much for being here with us. Big hug. See you later. Goodbye.